watching this probably find yourself in a similar situation to me, one of pretty extreme boredom due to the whole COVID lockdown. It's given me a bit of an incentive to make videos like this as a better way of spending my time, also hopefully a way of helping some of your boredom if you're watching. General themes to these episodes will be photography, books and bookmaking, and design as a more general, the design that goes along with those. This first episode I'm going to talk about two projects from the past, both of which were book outcomes. First one was a year and a half ago. This second one was a more recent project which I finished a month ago. So I'm going to talk through those and just explain how I kind of get from a brief or an idea to some sort of finished outcome. Episode 1, see how this goes. Hopefully you enjoy it. With each of these I want to do 3 kind of shout outs, 3 things a week that I can also point you towards to hopefully help this overall situation. First one is a radio station by a few friends of mine in a flat, isolation station, good name. They broadcast different shows, multiple a day, every day. Yeah, so you can stream free on a website or there's an app for it. I'll link all the stuff you need to know in the description. Get yourself a coffee, listen to some good stuff. Your ears will thank you for it. They've only been doing it for like 2 weeks I think, and it's already, it's like they've got a lot of stuff going, they've got a lot of people involved. It's only going to get better as this lockdown gets worse. Second is a friend of mine in India has started an Instagram page called Backlogzine. Anyone can submit work to her with a short description and their name and stuff like that. So for each person she will post any photos that you've sent, a short description of your work and your name. I believe she's working on a website as well to act as more of a better kind of platform to hold everyone's work. Backlogzine, some very nice stuff on there, and it will hopefully be a lovely website soon with lots of good content. And the third is an Instagram page, Sad Grads. It's in reference to all the 4th year soon to be graduates this year that have unfortunately had to have their degree show cancelled. I can't even imagine being in my 4th year. You work so hard towards a degree show and it gets cancelled. So this is an important one. This is basically similar to the Backlogzine. It's just an online platform way of experiencing all these people's work that you otherwise would have hopefully experienced in person at shows and stuff like that. It also makes it a bit more accessible because you can see work from all over the country. So yeah, Sad Grads, I'll link all these Instagrams and websites and stuff down below. And yeah, just go and give them support. Look at their work because it's all worthy of looking at. Yes. So that is 3 shoutouts for the week. Okay, time to get into the projects. The first project I'm going to speak about is the more recent one. I finished this project about a month ago now. It ended up being a book called We Take to the Land in Search of More. I'm going to split it into 4 sections. The first being explaining through the idea and concept. Second being artist research and any other influences that kind of guided the process. The third will be my own primary research, like the subject matter, how I'm taking photos, what I'm using to shoot with. And the fourth will be the actual making of the book itself. We'll just blast through this, I suppose. So number 1, general idea and concept of this project. The brief initially was to shoot some sort of landscape project and have a edited sequence of 20 to 30 images which you could later compile into book form. At the time I was reading quite a lot of John Berger's work. He spoke quite interestingly about memory and how memory is tied to photographs and all these kind of connections around that pairing. Speaks about it quite deeply. It's definitely worth a read. Yeah, I knew I wanted to do something with memory and maybe explore aspects of my own memories and of others through this project. I had all these photographs of my mum which I hadn't seen. So she passed when I was younger, so already I had limited memories of her, so I thought that would be a good place to start. I was 9 when she died, so you can imagine that if you think back to before you're 9, there's only snippets of certain things you can remember, and that of course gets even more limited when you're trying to remember them in direct reference to one person. That was the main starting point, trying to go back and kind of write down my own memories as much as I could, with a main focus on places that I could potentially revisit to shoot. This then led on to the idea of talking with other people about their memories of my mum. To sum up quite a few weeks of this project, it was mostly just me meeting up with some of her old friends, her family, people I'm close with of course, and just having these discussions and writing down certain parts of the discussions about her. It's very nice because I learned a lot about her which I'd never heard of before. After a couple of weeks I had all these kind of quotes, these certain locations and dates of things to potentially revisit and make photographs around this idea of her. And so all this led me on to the process of just researching and kind of looking at other artists' work. Things that could get my mind going in a certain direction of how I was going to actually shoot this work. One of the books I initially looked at as research was a book published by Mac. If you're not aware of Mac publishers, I would recommend their website a lot. They make beautiful books, all surrounding photography, and yeah, they work with really interesting artists. There's a lot of mixed stuff on there. So this book was by Alan Huck, I Walk Toward the Sun, which is always going down. I unfortunately don't own this book, but looking through it and looking at some of the spreads on their website was great for me to get an idea of what I was kind of going for, I think, with my project. It jumps between black and white images as well as colour, which I thought was quite unusual, but there's also this text, quite a lot of text that kind of continuously flows throughout this book with the photographs. I believe this was shot in the American Southwest. He would go walks and shoot these photographs, and in the outcome of the book they're paired with this kind of internal monologue like writing. But yeah, this was a big one because I knew my project was going to focus on these quotes, and I knew from the get-go I wanted to include text. And yeah, I think the size of this book, the way the photographs are laid out and how they flow with the kind of smaller set type, it just seems to work very well. The text complements the photographs as much as the photos do the text. But yeah, Alan Huck's work, this was the first one. Really nice book. And to quickly go on to Mac books, I do own a few of their books, one of which is the Luigi Giri retrospective. And yeah, just to show kind of how nice their printing is, they use a lot of different paper stocks in terms of differentiating between essays or introductory texts between the actual main body of work. So this was definitely a big influence for me in terms of thinking ahead of how I wanted the book as an object to feel, and how paper and the binding and everything about the way that you open this and experience it, like it can match up with the work so well if it's done correctly. It's like an attention to detail. Everything seems to be very thought out, nothing seems to be done by mistake. Owning this book, looking through it, it's almost as nice as the work itself, just as something as an object. So yes, that was a kind of main source of influence. So on to the work itself, the kind of subject matter of this book. I knew I wanted to shoot this project black and white. I just think it suited the context of memory a little better. When you see a black and white photo, for me it just has a bit more of an importance to it because you are reducing everything into just grey tones. You pick up on things a lot more, things like form and these like emotive qualities more, because there isn't colour to distract or take away from that. And of course in terms of like a visual language, they're all going to be a little bit more coherent. I took some visits alone as well as with some of the family to 4 or 5 different locations I think, and just shot kind of intuitively. It was quite odd being somewhere where I didn't have a memory of my mum there, but feeling kind of drawn to certain aspects of the land to photograph them. So it was quite a nice thing. It was quite meditative. Is that how you say that word? I think so. But yeah, it was quite a nice experience. It was quite calming. Walked up this quite a big hill with my uncle, which was nice for some views down over a caravan site where she used to come as like a very young child. So yeah, overall it was a nice way of shooting, a nice way of making new memories, kind of in reference to old ones of her. I shot with my usual 81, it's my kind of go-to 35mm, and I also shot on 2 borrowed cameras from my art school, a Hasselblad which shot 6x6 medium format negatives, and a Mamiya which shot slightly smaller 4.5x6. By the end of it I think I had 60 negatives to work with. A lot of the photographs were quite ambiguous, not very specific. You wouldn't really know for just seeing one what it meant or what it was kind of pointing towards. But I knew that these photographs in the book were going to be paired with quite literal descriptions. So I didn't want to make it all too ambiguous, but also not too obvious to whoever was looking through this book. Which leads on to the next important step of actually compiling this as a book. I used InDesign to do this after going through some physical layouts in person to figure out kind of a size of book I wanted. If I can remember correctly, it's like the height of an A4 page, but it's just slightly narrower. So it gives a kind of nicer feel. It doesn't feel like your standard kind of like office document size. There was again a lot of just trial and error of doing certain kind of design layouts for the photos and printing them and seeing how they kind of hold as an object, how they fit within the page. I needed a layout that would work with showing quite delicate text set in italics on one page and a heavier kind of bigger image on the other. So a lot of the spreads were quite consistent, either of one image per page or like a pair of a quote and an image on a spread. Some pages were full bleeds. Yeah, there was slightly varying factors, but there was always 3 consistent baselines for the text and 1 consistent border size for the images. I knew I wanted to bind this. It's a kettle stitch. So there's 3 signatures, 2 of them with an extra sheet of lighter paper. It breaks up each signature nicely, that differentiates each signature. I folded each page and then stitch the 3 together using a kettle stitch. Once you have stitched, you press them overnight with some glue on the spines to just reinforce it, and after that you use this big machine that kind of trims them perfectly down to where they're meant to be cut. That's your main book done, your text block you call it. That's that kind of ready to be attached onto a cover, which is a fold out cover which contains a piece of writing. So yeah, there's a fold out kind of essay / reflective text on the entirety of this project. I think it's a nice kind of add-on that gives you something more to understand the project as a whole. I first started with a big sheet of this thick kind of greenish brown card. There was a lot of measuring out, deciding where the middle will go, where the folds for the outer covers will fold into to contain the essay and stuff like that. So yeah, that was just spending time making sure the maths was right, carefully measuring things out like crease marks and fold marks. And then after that it was time to emboss. Using brass type, you lay out your title and how it will look on the page, and then I applied a thin layer of transparent white ink so that when it's pressed into paper it just gives it this darker effect. So yeah, after tests and measuring out to hopefully get it bang on the centre of the page, you just do the emboss. You kind of get one go at it, so it was quite scary, but yeah, it turned out well. I really like how the cover turned out. So I had all the 3 components, the text block, the essay and the cover. It was now time to just fold and glue the cover, and that was the book done. You've got the emboss in the front with a wraparound cover which opens up to the essay, which is contained in just 2 little slits. And then it's a naked spine, so it's only attached at the back. And it was a little bit harder than things I'd done in the past, but it was all worth it. I learned quite a lot of new stuff. There was things I did wrong which I'll learn from next time. I was really happy with this project. I think as a book I liked it. The images I think came out decent. It was nice to have quite a personal kind of body of work put into like a nice object that can be shown to family and friends and stuff like that. I'll link the page on my website down below if you want to read a little bit more about it or just look through the scans. Yeah, that was the first project. I will now not be talking about the second project, even though at the start of this video I said there'd be 2. I think so far this video is long enough as it is. So that is episode 1 over. If you've made it this far, then give yourself a bloody pat on the back. I do want to get more people involved in this. Look out for a post on my Instagram soon. I'm going to do some sort of thing where if people want to get involved, then they can get in contact and hopefully can feature a lot more people on these episodes, because I don't just want to ramble on about my own shit. Episode 1 is over. Thank you very much for watching. Until the next one, stay inside and stay safe. I will see you soon.